Chapter 1: The Desert and the Angel's Decree. I squinted against the brutal desert sun, feeling the crushing weight of its unrelenting glare. My once cheerful brown eyes had become hollow, reflecting the savage world that showed no mercy, not to me nor to anyone else. "It's all about survival," I whispered to the desolate landscape. The earth, once vibrant, now danced in the wind as mere granules of sand, faded memories of verdant forests, and the human society that had crumbled under endless wars. Despite the stifling heat, I shivered, haunted by painful memories tugging at my heartstrings. My gaze remained fixed on the horizon, not in anticipation of the future, but in expectation of more suffering. I clung to life with a stubborn resolve, savoring every sip of water as if it were the sweetest nectar, each bite of food a triumph. The luxury of joy and sorrow had long passed. My existence revolved solely around one thing: survival. "Dreams," I muttered to the cracked earth beneath my feet. "What good are they in a world where you can't even guarantee you'll be breathing by dusk?" There was a time when I, too, had dreams of peace, of shared joy, of burdens lifted by another's presence. But those dreams had become mere shadows, replaced by the grim reality of survival. Deserts stretched endlessly before me, death looming ever closer. Yet, despite it all, I endured. I was a beacon of human tenacity in a world devoid of hope. Defiantly, I stared at the barren lands, silently vowing to myself, "I'll fight, no matter what." The world exacted a harsh toll on me each day, but I kept moving, fueled by an unyielding determination. The future was uncertain, but I refused to cower. I looked deep into the infinite sands of the desert, bracing myself for whatever came next. Chapter 2: The Proclamation of Hope. I had grown accustomed to the desert's harsh winds and the searing sun, but on this day, there was an eerie calm. The sun burned as brightly as ever, but a stillness had settled over the landscape. Instinctively, I felt a wariness grip me. Something was wrong. I scanned the sky and saw it, a figure descending from above, radiant and ethereal like an angel. My heart skipped a beat as the figure landed gently on the cracked earth. For a moment, it seemed as if the very laws of the desert had been suspended. I stared, awe and fear twisting together in my chest. "Is this real?" I muttered, unable to take my eyes off the celestial being. Her voice rang out, both melodic and commanding, echoing across the barren wasteland. "The last beacon of hope for humanity has been lit." Her words struck the air like a hammer, and the earth responded. The ground beneath me trembled as towering peaks erupted from the desert, vast mountains that dwarfed everything around them. Each mountain contained an entrance, gateways, or dungeons, she called them. "These dungeons are your trial, your salvation. Face the challenges within, and you may secure your existence. Fail, and your fate is sealed." Her words shook me to my core, upending any sense of normalcy I had managed to maintain. As she ascended back into the sky, I was left standing in a transformed world, dominated by these ominous mountains. Her proclamation echoed in my mind, stirring both anticipation and dread. "Dungeons or this infernal life outside," I muttered, glancing at the foreboding entrances. The choice was clear. These dungeons held both danger and promise. Chapter 3: The Decision. I hadn't known companionship in years. Family, friends, those were luxuries I had long since abandoned in favor of survival. Standing before the colossal mountains, their sheer size imposing and their shadowed entrances sinister, I felt a mix of fear and liberation. These mountains weren't natural. That much was obvious. I murmured to myself, "They aren't from this world." The dungeons posed a grave threat, but also a chance for something more. They offered an escape from the desolate world outside, scarred by war and stripped of humanity. With no loved ones left to mourn my fate, I felt oddly free. The path before me was clear. I knew my destiny lay within those gates. Gritting my teeth, I steeled myself for the challenge ahead. I could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on me, but I pressed forward regardless. The sound of my footsteps the only noise in the overwhelming silence. The mountains loomed larger with each step, yet I refused to falter. My eyes burned with a resolve born of hardship. "Here goes nothing," I whispered, stepping into the dark entrance. I left the world behind, my footprints erased by the wind, and plunged into the unknown. I ventured deeper into the dungeon, the shadows swallowing me whole, as if the world I once knew had already forgotten I ever existed. Chapter 4. The Dungeon's Trial. The dungeon's damp, cold air was a stark contrast to the relentless desert I had lived in for years. The stone walls echoed with the sounds of distant creatures, their eerie movements crawling into the depths of my mind. My heart pounded in my chest, filling with images of monstrous versions of the animals that had once roamed the earth, twisted by the same force that had forever altered our world. Survival had always been my focus, a constant struggle against the unforgiving heat of the desert and the scarcity of resources. But this was something entirely different. Survival in the dungeon wasn't about enduring harsh conditions. It was a fight for my life against beasts born from nightmares. My body, weakened by years of barely scraping by, felt unprepared for the battles to come. Out of the shadows, a grotesque rat, larger than any I had seen before, lunged at me. I barely managed to dodge its strike, feeling the rush of air as its claws swiped inches from my face. My breath came in ragged gasps, adrenaline flooding my veins. "I have to fight," I whispered through gritted teeth, ducking under another vicious attack. Grabbing a jagged stone from the floor, I wielded it like a weapon. When the rat lunged again, I blocked its attack, the impact reverberating painfully up my arm. Survival had taken on a new meaning. This wasn't just about outlasting nature's cruelty, it was about facing monsters in a battle for life itself. The rat lunged once more, but this time, instinct took over. I dodged its attack, countering with a wild strike, slashing at the rat's side. My movements were clumsy, unrefined, but I had spent my life fighting for survival, and this was no different. With a final desperate swing, I struck the rat, using every ounce of strength I had left. As the rat twitched and then lay still, a glowing window appeared before me, floating in the air, an eerie reminder of the new reality I lived in. Core detected, empty core level 1. Element unknown. Essence 1000. I stared at the words, the truth of it settling in. The core, the strange new organ that had appeared in all humans after the dungeons emerged. We had all been given empty cores, waiting to be filled with the essence of the monsters we killed. Each kill brought me closer to unlocking a monster core, a key to survival in this twisted new world. I had heard the stories. Once a core was full, it would present me with options, monster cores I could choose from, depending on what I had accomplished. But there were strict requirements. To get a rat core, I needed to kill 100 rats. To get a rabbit core, I needed to kill 200 rabbits. Wolves required 500 kills, and for the most powerful creatures, I'd need to slay 1,000. And then, there were the mythical beasts. Creatures so powerful that killing just one would unlock their core. But those cores required a much larger core than I currently had, and no one knew how to grow theirs. For now, my core was still empty, save for the single essence I had just harvested from the rat. I knew it would be a long, grueling process before I could choose a core. Worse, if I didn't meet the requirements for any monster, I'd be forced to accept an insect core, the lowest of the low. Once a core was chosen, it was locked for life, shaping the user's abilities permanently. I had to be careful, but at the moment, survival took precedence. As I caught my breath, I thought about the element system tied to the cores. Every core had an element determined by the creatures I hunted the most: fire, earth, wind, water. Whatever element was dominant in the monsters I killed, that would be the element I'd gain. It was the reason I had decided to hunt fire element creatures. I needed the fire element, not for power, but for something far more practical: cooking. I had survived long enough on scavenged scraps and barely edible creatures, but the one thing that had kept me going was hunting rabbits. They were the only thing that tasted remotely good, and they were one of the few animals I could actually catch. It wasn't that I had chosen to hunt rabbits for their core, far from it. I needed to eat, and rabbit was the only thing I could stomach. But the fire element, that was different. It was something I actively sought. If I could gather enough essence from fire-affiliated monsters like fire lizards, I would gain the ability to create fire. In this world, fire meant survival in more ways than one. Not only would it allow me to cook my food, but it would also be a powerful weapon. And I knew the creatures I'd have to kill to gain it, the elusive fire lizards, quick and deadly. Glancing back at the glowing window, I saw the cold reality before me. My essence count was a meager 1 out of 1,000. There was a long road ahead, filled with countless battles against rats, rabbits, lizards, and whatever else lurked in the shadows of this dungeon. I didn't choose this path. I muttered to myself, but I'll walk it. The rats and rabbits would give me the core I needed, whether I wanted them or not. But the fire lizards, that was a choice. I would hunt them for their essence, for the element that would grant me control over fire. I would make fire my ally, and with it, I would survive. Steeling myself, I ventured deeper into the dungeon. The air grew colder, more oppressive as I pushed forward. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the faintest stirrings of life. Or perhaps death, waiting for me in the darkness. The glowing window lingered before me, a reminder of what I was fighting for. I wasn't a warrior, but I was a survivor. And with each essence I collected, I would grow stronger, more determined. I didn't know what awaited me at the end of this journey, but I knew one thing for sure. I would fight for my fire, for my life, and for whatever future I had left in this desolate world. The fire lizards would be my next prey. And with every kill, I'd get one step closer to controlling the element that would keep me alive. Chapter 5, Filling the Core. The deeper I ventured into the dungeon, the more oppressive the air became. The damp chill wrapped around me like a shroud, a constant reminder of how far I was from the sun-scorched desert I once called home. The stone walls, slick with moisture, seemed to close in on me with every step. Yet, despite the darkness and the unknown dangers lurking within, I felt a strange sense of purpose. The fire element. The rabbit core. Both were necessities for my survival, but neither would be easily obtained. The dungeon's first floor was vast, almost labyrinthine, and it was crawling with creatures. My immediate goal was simple: hunt the rabbits for sustenance and fill my core. But the fire lizards, that was the real challenge. Their speed and unpredictability made them difficult to track, let alone kill. I needed their essence to ignite the fire inside me, both literally and metaphorically. Without fire, I was just another vulnerable human in a world that chewed up and spat out the weak. I encountered the first pack of rabbits within a few hours of wandering. They were fast, but I had learned to anticipate their movements. Their fur, a dull gray against the stone, blended into the environment. But their twitching noses and wide, wary eyes gave them away. My stomach growled at the sight of them, the thought of their meat making my mouth water. Carefully, I positioned myself behind a rock, watching their movements, waiting for the right moment. It wasn't a noble hunt. There was no strategy, no honor in it. I was desperate. I hurled a jagged stone, striking one of the rabbits square in the side. The creature fell, twitching, as the others scattered into the shadows. I rushed forward, finishing it off with a quick strike. The glowing window appeared again, informing me of the essence I had harvested. Essence collected 1,000. 5 rabbits. I needed 5 more to reach the first milestone. As I skinned the rabbit and prepared its meat, I felt a momentary sense of peace. The taste was a reminder of something long gone, something that had once been normal. A warm meal, however simple, was a luxury in this world. The fire lizards were a different story. Their elusive nature and their ability to blend into the heated cracks of the dungeon floor made them far more difficult to hunt. I stalked them for hours, watching for the flicker of flame that marked their presence. When I finally caught sight of one, I knew I had to act fast. The creature, about the size of a small dog, darted across the stones, its fiery tail leaving a faint glow in the darkness. I chased it, my heart pounding as I scrambled over rocks and uneven ground. When I finally closed the distance, I used the same tactic I had used on the rats, grabbing the nearest jagged stone and throwing it with all my strength. The stone hit its mark, and the lizard let out a shrill cry as it collapsed in a burst of flame. As the fire lizard lay still, the essence filled me, a warmth spreading through my core. Essence collected, 50, 1,000. Element fire. The fire element, the first spark. I felt it deep within me, a subtle heat growing stronger with each fire creature I killed. It wasn't much yet, but it was enough to start a small flame. It gave me the power I so desperately needed, not just to survive, but to have some control over my own fate. I could cook, I could protect myself from the cold, and eventually I could use fire as a weapon. Days passed, and the dungeon became my world. I hunted rabbits for sustenance, occasionally catching fire lizards to fuel the growing flame within me. My essence count slowly climbed as I moved through the dungeon, avoiding larger, more dangerous creatures when I could. But the dungeon was never empty, and I wasn't alone. I came across others like me, humans, desperate, fighting for their lives. At first, I thought we might find some common ground, that perhaps the trials of the dungeon would bring us together. But I quickly learned the truth. This was not a place for unity. In this era, everyone was out for their own gain. One encounter stayed with me. A group of 3, ragged and hungry, had set up camp in a narrow passage. I stumbled upon them by accident, my footfall too loud on the stone. Their eyes, hollow and predatory, turned to me instantly. There was no warmth in their gaze, no recognition of shared humanity, only greed and calculation. "We saw you hunting the rabbits," one of them said, a man with a scar running down the side of his face. His voice was cold, devoid of empathy. "Hand over whatever you've got, and maybe we'll let you walk away." I said nothing, my grip tightening on the stone in my hand. They outnumbered me, but I could see the weakness in their eyes. They were starving, desperate, and desperation made people dangerous. "You don't want to do this," I said quietly, my voice low but firm. "I've got nothing worth taking." They advanced, but I didn't give them the chance to strike. I threw the stone at the leader, the man with the scar, hitting him in the chest. He stumbled back, more surprised than hurt, and in that moment of confusion, I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I knew what people were capable of in this new world. There was no sense in trying to reason with them. After countless hunts, I finally reached the end of my journey. The essence in my core was full. A warmth spread through my chest, different from the fire I had collected before. This was something deeper, a kind of fulfillment I hadn't known in years. The glowing window appeared before me, marking my success. Essence collected 1,000. Core evolution available, rabbit core, fire element. I stood still, my hands shaking. This was it. My core, the very essence of my being, was now locked into place. The fire element burned within me, its warmth a small comfort in the dungeon's cold air. I had chosen this path, not because I wanted the rabbit core, but because it was what I could hunt, what I could survive on. The fire lizards had given me the element I needed, and now I could finally create fire at will. A strange sense of satisfaction filled me as the core settled within. I wasn't proud, nor was I relieved. But I had survived, and in this world, that was the only thing that mattered. With my core filled, I knew the path ahead would only get harder. But for the first time in a long while, I felt ready. Ready to face the dungeon's challenges and ready to confront whatever lay beyond.